Uh, Good afternoon to all of you. On behalf of the Institute of Rural Management, Anand, I'm Shambu Prasad and would like to welcome all our panelists first who have agreed to give their time to be part of this conversation today. And to many of you who have registered, we are encouraged by the sheer diversity of people who have agreed to participate in this webinar. I think they will be joining us soon. I think what we just figured is, I think we have more than 100 organizations represented across the country, and probably one or two even from outside the country who would be joining us today. So just a few points before I get started. So we are expecting another panelist to be joining us shortly. And to all those who are attending the webinar, I would encourage all of you to feel free to share any comments that you may have, through the chat box or the Q&A part. So some of us can take it up as and when possible. There is a possibility that we can also take up a translation if required for some who may not be comfortable with English. So Ishtiaq is with us from the National Coalition for Natural Farming, and he has offered to do so in case we do need a translation. So without further ado, I'd just like to start today's conversation. So this is being put together in collaboration with the National Coalition for Natural Farming. And some of you have been members of various groups when the announcement of the curriculum was made by the Government of India. A committee has been set up. We will be referring to that in a short while. And then the feeling amongst a few of us was to try and see if we can put together ideas which many have been working for quite some time, and try and get a diverse set of ideas together, which we could share with the committee and be in dialogue with the process that is going on, and also bring the diversity of experiences in looking at agricultural curriculum. So I have a brief presentation that we at the Small Farm or the Living Farm Incomes project at IRMA have put together. So after that brief presentation, which is likely to set the context, we would then have this panel discussion. We will do it in a format where we hope we can have more time for discussion. So the panelists will roughly respond to a key lead question for about 5 minutes, 5 to 6 minutes. And we will then take this along. And we do hope we can have time to also accommodate as many questions from the audience as possible. Yeah, I hope my screen is visible.
It's visible,
yes.
sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've called this seminar Agroecology in University Curriculum. I mean, the word agroecology is a word that is kind of familiar with many of us who are somewhat outside the agricultural establishment as a knowledge domain. But within the agricultural establishment, agroecology is often used only in terms of agroecological zones. So we would like to think of agroecology as a much broader category, which includes a diversity of practices and many experiments have happened across the country in this. And the most common in today's parlance is the natural farming word that has become extremely popular. But there have been, as many of us are aware, organic farming, jaivik kheti, and many other kinds of practices that has been on for quite some time in India. And all of this, some of it at least have been directly in response to the Green Revolution paradigm and also looking at low external inputs, sustainable agriculture. So today's discussion is to see how do we bring about this, the opportunity for transiting from a green revolution paradigm to one that is an agroecological paradigm, and what are the challenges in this sustainable transition. So, so the national agenda of natural farming seems to indicate a change in the air. So for some who are, of course, familiar with and have been working on this theme for maybe a few decades, it may not be something new, but it may not be incorrect at one level to say that this is perhaps historically an opportunity where the discourse on natural farming or an alternative to the input intensive farming has actually become quite mainstream, with some of the major bodies, starting with the Niti Aayog, actually having a dialogue and also opening up a portal on natural farming sometime in November. And some of us were part of the pre-Vibrant Gujarat Summit, which ended with a fairly big event, which had the Home Minister, the Governor of Gujarat, and the Ministry of Agriculture, as well as the Prime Minister, talking about natural farming and the Government of India's intent to try and take this to scale in some sense. The need to have natural farming in the syllabi of agriculture universities found mention in Nirmala Sitharaman's, the Union Finance Minister's speech. And in between this was a 14-member committee that was set up by the Government of India to develop curriculum on natural farming. And the terms essentially is to look at both undergraduate and postgraduate level, syllabus and curricula, including theory and practice, as per NEP 2020. The possibility of structuring a one-year certificate course, and with opportunities for entry in and out, and also developing guidelines for entrepreneurship of students in the area of natural farming. So it's in this context that we are trying to discuss this idea of curriculum. And what we would like to just mention in some sense is that this idea of going towards sustainable agriculture is prevalent across the world. And there are sometimes challenges when you make a sudden shift, as people have experienced in Sri Lanka. So one part of the story is about the techniques involved in, and the knowledge domains. But there's another part which talks about the institutional processes. And I think it was captured reasonably well in the UN Food Systems track early in December 2020, when there was this frame that you cannot talk about this transition in food systems without building the agency, changing existing relations, and the need to transform institutions. So within building agency, there is the role of civil society organizations in contributing to knowledge on sustainable farming. And how do we actually create mechanisms where, in a sense, we do know that much of the knowledge on agroecology has possibly come from farmers' fields, indigenous knowledge, many civil society organizations working on it for quite some time. So how is it that this dialogue between the knowledge that exists outside the four walls of agriculture universities can actually feed into some of the important mainstreamed upscaled initiatives that are ongoing? And the second thing is, how do we prepare youth? So we're talking of nearly close to 1 lakh graduates every year coming out of all the agriculture universities in India. And we've had these schemes earlier called Arya and Maya, which were talking about attracting rural youth to agriculture and so on. The name has changed, the processes haven't changed, and I don't think the impact has been anywhere close to the intent of trying to attract youth towards agriculture. So how can sustainable agriculture provide an opportunity for youth to think about their own lives and livelihoods, including those of the farming community, somewhat differently. And many actually also come from the farming community too. So what we would like to suggest, and this is some ongoing work at IRMA, where we would like to look at this idea of how do we manage these sustainable transitions. And these transitions, this is a complex kind of problem which involves multiple actors with different kinds of orientations. And there are many things that obviously has to happen at the farmer level in terms of their beliefs, values, and practices. There are things that also has to happen at the farm level, but in terms of regeneration of soils, ensuring seed sovereignty, and looking at farms as the on location, on farmers' fields rather than in laboratories alone, as the sites of knowledge creation. But there are equally larger issues which relate to policies and the systems and the institutions that are required to bring about this transformation. And a lot of it requires institutional collaborations between different kinds of institutions and also collective action. So in a sense, if we believe, that there should be this process of transiting towards sustainability, we need to start building up these processes where there could be this cross-disciplinary dialogues. And we look at institutional innovations where farmers, communities of practice, along with civil society organizations and the scientific base of institutions are there to create a new knowledge and a new movement as well. Very briefly, we've been at it, more focused in the last year or so, but some of us have been interested in this issue for much longer. So we've tried creating what we call a learning alliance on, on sustainable transition. So part of it was, of course, difficult because of COVID, but we weren't having enough face-to-face dialogues. But the idea is to keep going a multi-stakeholder dialogue between various kinds of groups, and one of which culminated in a fairly big event which we had during the Korean centenary celebrations, which was looking at rural transformation through agroecology. Before that, we had a state-level dialogue again with the NCNF, where we tried understanding the perspectives of people in this space, and that's how we kind of also got introduced to Dr. Kandarp Nevada and many others. And the idea is to try and build upon some of these initiatives as we go along. And we hope to carry this further with some more work a few months down the line, where we can have this dialogue with agriculture universities and the Department of Agriculture in Gujarat and possibly neighboring states too. A smaller part of it has been to support youth through internships, through collaborations with civil society organizations. Dr. Vasavi has been part of this through the Punarchit Collective, where youngsters are looking at the opportunities of working in agriculture through an exposure, and we've supported a few of them, and some blogs have come out as a result of it. And an ongoing process of trying to document and do some research by going to various farmers' fields and talking to different kinds of stakeholders on the ideas and opportunities in looking at sustainable transition. So the links here do provide some details of additional information that you may want to explore, and we'll be happy to share this also in the chat. So as part of this exercise, we also had an opportunity to take on some research, which was looking at what is the current state of knowledge on, natural farming, organic farming, as prevalent in the existing curriculum in most of the state agriculture universities. So we had an intern looking at it, and we've been following it ever since. So we picked up some of the 27 state agriculture universities, some of them ranked according to their ICAR rankings as well. So as we had indicated, agroecology does not feature as a category in the SAU curriculum, whereas it's kind of a very well-known name outside of the agricultural curriculum. There is a mention of organic farming in, and it is seen as part of agronomy, and it's not integrated with the other disciplines like agricultural economics or even agricultural engineering or horticulture, etc. So it's a kind of a standalone thing. This was recommended in the 5th ICAR Dean's Committee in 2017. So organic farming is introduced as a standalone subject, mostly in the pre-final or the 3rd year, and as a 2-credit subject on an average out of a possible 85 to 100. So it's a very, very small element of exposure that we are talking of the students going through this curriculum currently. And much of it is highly theoretical. It's not presented within the larger context of rural livelihoods or entrepreneurship or policy, which actually might determine their uptake. So, and the common themes are largely around cropping systems, integrated farming systems, nutrients, and microbiology also. Soil fertility courses also are there. But the important part of it is that there's very limited exposure for the students to currently work with or experiment on organic farming practices. Now, it doesn't mean that all the universities are not doing it. Of course, we do have some exceptions. Dr. Mewada will talk about the ongoing initiative at Anand Agriculture University. But broadly speaking, this is the landscape in which we're talking about, and we need to understand this as we move on to looking at how do we redesign the curriculum towards the needs of natural farming or organic farming. So how do we prepare for this shift? And I think the broader point is that we have to build the capacity of the universities in this direction, almost like you used to have these massive World Bank projects in the past that shifted directions towards, our agriculture universities having incubators, for example. So we actually need to bring this institutional change within agriculture universities, and curriculum is an important element of that. So the opportunities are not geared up to prepare students for the field level complexities of transitioning from chemical to sustainable farming. A very quick survey that we did, we have this year a reasonable number of students with an agriculture background in the 1st year program of postgraduate rural management, and we did a very small survey of the 1st year students who came in. 34 of them responded. We asked them, did they ever meet an organic farmer? A reasonable 2/3 mentioned yes, they did meet an organic farmer. Yes, they are aware of a course on organic farming as part of their curriculum, but largely it's been focused on biofertilizers and those kinds of inputs. Over 50% said they had no practical exposure to organic farming. In fact, while talking to the natural farming fellows in Andhra Pradesh, we found that while they were in different universities, including outside the state of Andhra Pradesh, the inputs they got was actually by going outside rather than being within the organization. And many of these courses had no courses on marketing or management to cover organic agriculture or produce. What is it that they would have liked to see? Some of them said, we have 200 acres of land. We would have really been happy to see if we could have been participating in an online experiment that was going on in this place. It should be taught through mandatory field visits, not in the classroom. And, we should look at issues of sustainability in the mind, and we should increase an entrepreneurial culture. Maybe even this be part of the RABE program that exists and so on. Very briefly, I think what we've listed here is a very small indication of the kinds of opportunities that currently exist for youth to pursue sustainable agriculture. Anshuman will speak to us about the 6-month certificate course, the University of Calcutta. There are natural farming fellowships, which are opportunities for people graduating from these universities, which is being run by the Andhra Pradesh Coalition Center for Natural Farming. And there are small courses started by the Gujarat Organic Agriculture University, the first organic university in India. It's still at early stages. There is a certificate course on organic farming by IGNOU. And interestingly, some of the private universities like Centurion University and probably even the SRM University on Agriculture have taken on agroecology a bit more seriously. Bhumi College, many of us are aware of their efforts. And there are many civil society organizations, including Ramanjanelu's own, which is running a Grameen Academy, offering certificate courses. But these are not seen as part of the mainstream option. So much happening outside. There's a lot of knowledge. Let's explore how this experience can be utilized in the way we look at it. So this is the broad context, and what we would like all our panelists to do is to respond to 3 questions. And so we will first take up the first question. 3 of our panelists will respond to that. And then, which is, what is the current innovations and initiatives in natural organic farming curriculum? And then we will ask a couple of our panelists to respond to what are the knowledge, challenges, and opportunities in engaging with mainstream agriculture universities on the shift towards agroecology. People have had experience of it, and all our panelists will then conclude by giving us opportunities, ideas on what should be the guiding principles for the curriculum committee constituted by ICAR. So this is how we intend going forward. And I would now like to invite Deborah to both introduce the panelists and take up the first question, and I'll join in a bit later. Over to you, Deborah.
Thank you, Professor Shambu. It's my pleasure to introduce the panelists. We currently have Brigadier Sukhdeep Sawant, who is unable to join due to some technical glitches, but his colleague Vilas Sawant is here, so we can check with him if he wants to join. But before that, I'll just introduce the panelists who will be speaking right now. So Anshuman Das is a food activist with 20 years of experience as a trainer and researcher. He is currently associated with Weltmunger Hilfe and is responsible for managing programs in South Asia related to agriculture, environment, and economic development. Anshuman has traveled to many countries to conduct training as a guest lecturer and a consultant. He played an instrumental role in designing, monitoring, capacity building, and methodology of development in biofarm program with DRCSC. Dr. Kandav Mewara is an associate professor at Anand Agricultural University. He has been associated with the university for more than 3 decades. He developed the course curriculum for postgraduate study at the Gujarat Organic Agricultural University and is currently the director of research at the institute. Amongst many academic recognitions, he is also the recipient of the first Sardar Patel Award for Soil and Water Management Research in the state, instituted by the government of Gujarat. Brigadier Sukhdeep Sawant is the founder chairman of Krishi Vigyan Kendra, Sindhudurg, and he is the member of many committees in Maharashtra involved with agriculture, education, and youth employment issues. He has a deep interest in sustainable agricultural practices and has founded several NGO initiatives. So I would now request the panelists to basically share their views on what are the innovations and initiatives in natural or organic farming curriculum based on their practical experiences. So we can start with Anshuman.
Yes, so I will try to share my screen.
Sure.
Yes, so am I visible? Like
yes.
my screen?
Yes, you can just make it full screen.
Yeah, so I'm trying to. Okay, so we tried with 6 months certificate course in the beginning, and we realized that 6 months course is too long for the students, because often the students are practitioners, the students are researchers, they're doing their PhD and they're taking some time off to be here with us for the course. So then we tried out a shorter version of 1 month, and we realized that 1 month is too short. So with all this trial and error, we somehow finalized this 3 months course. And I would like to share some of the insights that we learned from the course. So one very important thing is whenever we talk about any agriculture course, we very quickly jump onto the ideas of what are the practices, what are the techniques, and what is the content of the training. But here we realize that it's very important to focus on the students. So we wanted to develop agroecologists rather than teaching them agroecology. So we tried to build their competencies like observation, reflection, analysis, dialogue, communication, because we realized that these students are going to be the change maker. So they have to go out and work with the farmers or work with the community or work with the even a set of entrepreneurs to make some changes. So we kind of designed some kind of curriculum. I'm coming to that in a minute, which is basically action reflection based cyclical learning, not one-dimensional teaching for covering the topics. So this goes like this. We generally try to place the students with a farmer. So we make a group of students and place them with a farmer, and they stay there. Before that, we give them tool, give them idea of how to assess the existing challenges, needs of that particular community, of that particular village, of that particular farmer. So they stay with them. They try to understand the challenges and develop whatever questions they have in their mind. They come back again, reflect on the learning, try to analyze whatever they realized in their farm stay. And then we try to assess, and try to help them on their questions on how to develop that farm further. So we again try to give skills, tools, knowledge, the macro perspective, and then they develop a vision of that particular farm that they have visited. That what this farm can look like in next 3 years, 3 to 5 years. And they again go back to that same farmer and stay with them, try to validate that vision plan that the students have made with the farmer, and initiate some of the change process itself there. So, and then again, they come back, share, reflect on the process, and they share with the larger audience. So that's how it's cyclical. So they do some action and learn from that, reflect on that, fill in the gap, and again go back. It's not like just an exposure visit. So we often feel very contented by saying that, okay, I have tried to share this with agricultural universities, and this often said that, yes, we go to the farmers, we talk to them and all this, but that remains as a kind of a exposure visit level. So that doesn't become part of their learning. So which I think we tried here in this process. And we also realized that the learning arena, this need not be the university only. This need not be the four walls. So this has to be facilitator friendly. Like, to be frank, in the education system that we have here, the students are literally looking up to the teachers. So teachers are on the pedestal, and students are looking up to them for knowledge. So we're trying to come out of that. We're trying to create a space where group discussion, group activities. We try to involve farmers as a facilitators, as a trainer, practitioners. So many of our teachers are actually practitioners and farmers. So we try to widen the learning space. We try to include the the space outside the university in the course itself. So that was one major thing. And from how to teach, if we think about what to teach, I think you have already understood that we're talking about facilitation. We're not talking about teaching. We're not talking about providing information, because many of our things are very dynamic, because that depends on the questions that students are asking after their field visits. So though there are certain fixed amount of topics, but about 30% to 40% of the topics are not finalized at the beginning of the course. That depends much on the demand of the students. So and we often, the very important thing is we have to have an open mindset where it doesn't expect just one correct answer, because it's very difficult. I mean, we're not prescribing anything. So the agroecology is such a wide thing, and it varies so much depending on the location, depending on the socioeconomic profile as well. So you cannot have something very fixed. And so and the knowledge has to evolve, and we created a space where students have enough time to explore, even make mistakes, revisit findings and all this. And we have the 3 months courses designed in the way that in first month, we deal with the macro issues in terms of system and system thinking, history and politics, sustainability, basics of ecology and agriculture, and how can we move from ecology to agroecology, various cross-cutting issues which are linked with the agroecology, like nutrition, gender. So these are the first month, and the second month is basically going deep into the farming system, with all the micro details like farming principles, seeds, NPM, farming techniques, certification, all these things. But these are not exhaustive list, that there can be other things as per the demand of the students. And on the third month, they are going to develop the vision, like how can they visualize the future of that particular farm, and some other things, like how that farm is related to the entire watershed, or the entire socioeconomic paradigm of that particular space, how that is fit with the current climatic vagaries. And also, I think at the end, we discussed a lot about, as a change maker, how can you communicate better? How can you be so much of our focus is, as I see, the major thing is we focus much on the students rather than just delivering a few topics. Yes, so I think that was it in short.
Thank you, Anshuman. That was very interesting in terms of the exposure visit versus actually being immersed and learning at the farm, and the vision building process from macro to micro. Can I now request Dr. Kandat Mewara?
So Anshuman, just a clarificatory question. So yes, how many participants have been through this process till now, just to get a sense of the numbers?
So this is the 7th batch. So last 2 batches were online, actually, unfortunately. But we tried to assign students with the farm of their choice. So in first 5 courses were physical. So roughly 12 to 15 students per course on the physical batches. And in the online batches, we can cater around 30.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Deborah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So Dr. Kandat Mewara, may I ask you to share? And can I share the screen from my end?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can share this presentation.
Sure.
And thank you very much, Professor Shambu and Deborah, for inviting me as a panelist.
Yeah.
मैं हिंदी में बात कर सकता हूँ ना?
Yes, please.
Okay. तो सर, जब ये बात आई थी हमारी बेसिकली गुजरात ऑर्गेनिक एग्रीकल्चर यूनिवर्सिटी एस्टेब्लिश हुई 2017 में, और उसके बाद 2 years ago जब ये हमारे सामने इश्यू आया कि हमें उसका मास्टर डिग्री के लिए एक करिकुलम तैयार करना है, so at that time we do not have any clue at what stage or at what path we will go. हमारे पास कोई रास्ता नहीं था, कोई क्लू नहीं था। और जैसे शंभू जी ने बताया कि बीएससी के लेवल में सिर्फ 2 क्रेडिट का कोर्स रहता है उसका ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग का, and that is also a very preliminary type of course, so we don't have any idea. So at that time दूसरा क्या था कि we have to follow the ICR setup because it is a university. So as far as postgraduate is concerned, we have to follow the major course, minor course, and that seminar and thesis and research problems like that. So we have to follow the structure of ICR. The third issue is whether this course is valid for ICR or not. Because after 2 years, when our students get this MSc Agriculture in Organic Farming degree, they have to go for either PhD or for NET examination or some entrepreneurship. They have 3 choices. Either they go for the further study, either in India or abroad. Number 1. Number 2, they have to appear for some examinations or they can carry out that career. And number 3, कि अगर उनको एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप शुरू करना है तो गवर्नमेंट से भी ये रिकॉग्नाइज है ये डिग्री। तो ये 3 जो क्वेश्चन से उसके हिसाब से हमने एक कोर्स जो है वो कोर्स प्लान आउट किया था, एंड दैट इज MSc Agri in Agronomy, because we know agronomy, we specialization in organic farming, so we try to give a due weightage on the organic farming system or all this field management through organic way. But fortunately this year ICR has approved one organic farming course, that is MSc Agri in Organic Farming. So then we started that program from this year. So as a major areas of activities of our university, as far as education is concerned, we have postgraduate degree leading to MSc Agri, and we will start for PhD next year if ICR approved the PhD course also. Second is the postgraduate diploma. The most important thing that because Gujarat Organic Agriculture University confines its education activities up to the PG level. We are not going for UG because our act do not permit us to go for UG activities. So basically, as Professor Shambu said, the basic thing is to change the mindset, because the students coming from the traditional agriculture, they have the mindset of chemical or modern agriculture like that. So it is very difficult for them and for us also to translate that mind. उनका तो क्या होता है कि एक डिग्री मिलेगी उनको कोई नौकरी मिल जाएगी, but this organic course is a holistic approach. As Ansuman rightly mentioned, that we have to start thinking. हमें जो स्टूडेंट है उसका जो थिंकिंग है वो उसी विषय में आगे बढ़ाना पड़ेगा, उसका एक विजन है वो क्लियर करना पड़ेगा. The second thing that what we are planning is the research. So हमारा जो मेन फोकस होगा वो रिसर्च, क्योंकि पहले रिसर्च होगा उसके बाद ही ये सब कैरिकुलम और वो जो सब है उसका हम आगे अच्छी तरह से कर सकेंगे. The first is the input standardization. So whatever the inputs we are using in agriculture, that should be standardized. Then the identification, access, and validation of indigenous technological knowledge. We have so many of indigenous knowledge, but we are not any validation of that knowledge. So we have to identify that, access it, and then validate it. So as far as my PG students are concerned, our first focus is to validate, to identify and validate this IT case. Then standardization of IFS, because organic is an integrated farming system. So for different agroclimatic zones of Gujarat states, we want to identify that different IFS and large scale organic input production system. So we are going to put one RKVY project on that also. Then research on renewable energy, that is also one another aspect. Then good agronomical practices for different crops of Gujarat state under organic farming. So this is, as far as production is concerned, this is a very good field that we have to develop a good agronomical practices. Because if we do not have these practices, we cannot give some package of practices to the farmers. So it is depend, and then pesticide residue laboratory we will start, soil and water analysis laboratory, then collection, maintenance, procurement of local seeds and develop them through organic technology. So basically we have four aspects as far as this organic farming is concerned. The one is seed, that is the indigenous seeds and their maintenance. Second is plant nutrition and soil health. Third is plant protection, then certification and marketing. So we try to collect or summarize all these aspects in one course. So then as far as extension is concerned, we have already prepared one short-term training course for farmers and entrepreneurs. And this will, that certificate course for organic farming for 3 months and training of farmers and rural youth through RKVY, that we will taken later on. Again, next. So this is the ICR MSc Agri Organic Farming course, that is the concept and principles of organic farming. They cover mostly all of the subjects, including organic farm production system, plant health management, post-harvest, integrated farming system, then research methodology, marketing, climate resiliency, and research methodology. Next. And as far as minor and supporting courses are concerned, we focus on the soil science, that is for the soil health, and other biochemistry, microbiology, then defense mechanism, like that. And this is a short-term or 15 days program for organic farming. This is for farmers. So next. So this is about the curriculum. Okay. So when we are talking about the future of this one, okay, next.
You want me to go ahead?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
No, different courses, not challenges. Challenges, we discuss challenges and opportunities afterwards.
All right. So I can end it now?
Yeah. This is just for the knowledge of the house. Okay.
Okay, great. So we have Dr. Vilas Saban,
Right.
who is the head scientist at KVK Sindhudurg, if he would like to share a bit.
Sure.
Dr. Sawant, आप हैं क्या? Or we could circle back, maybe based after the discussion if he wants to share.
Okay, no problem.
So Dr. Mewada, just a quick question as we move to the next speaker and panelists as well. So apart from Gujarat Organic Agriculture Universities, I think this was also a question asked earlier, are there other universities running this MSc Organic Agriculture, or yours is the only one?
Sir, we are the
Your own
only one,
knowledge.
and we are the first university to adopt ICR curriculum. So where it is approved on the next day, very next day we adopt it because we are waiting for that curriculum.
Just to add on, Shambu, Telangana State Agriculture University started this year.
Okay.
Both as a MSc course as well as a diploma course.
Thank you.
Diploma course is online, but there is a PG course they started.
Yeah. So I think so many universities will start this MSc organic farming course from the next year, next academic year.
So as we probably await, Vilas ji, आप अगर चाहे तो अनम्यूट करके आप बात कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि KVK Sindhudurg is one of the interesting initiatives where they have been involved in this process for quite some time. So along with, you know, things that are happening, what we heard from the Gujarat Organic Agriculture Universities, we also heard from curriculum that's outside of the universities through what Anshuman Das had mentioned. Vilas Sawant ji, आप बात कर सकते हैं कि I think we are still having some technical issues. Yeah, so if हाँ विलास जी, आप अपनी बात रखिए, हम आवाज सुनाई दे रही है आपकी, अनम्यूट करिए। Okay, Vilas ji, we will come back to you.
हेलो नमस्ते सर।
नमस्ते। आपके रूम में शायद और एक मशीन चल रहा होगा।
हाँ, माई सेल्फ डॉक्टर विलास सावंत फ्रॉम केवीके सिंधुदुर्ग।
हाँ, अभी आवाज ठीक से सुनाई दे रहा है, बोलिए आप।
फार्मिंग फॉर लास्ट 5 years. So our KVK is a initiative taken on natural farming to transfer the natural farming technologies towards farmers' field. So we are organizing demonstrations and the field experiments towards the farmers' field, and the in the form of training, we have developed the training module for 5 days training module and 3 days training module to disseminate the natural farming technologies, and also train the farmers to preparation the inputs, bio inputs, as like the Jivamrut, Ghanajivamrut, Bijamrut, Agni Astra. These are the bio inputs mostly required in natural farming practices. So in our area, the farmers are now motivated to use the Jivamrut on large scale. So desi cows are available in our area. So in some part, the farmers are using now the Jivamrut as well as Ghanajivamrut. Also in our KVK farm, we have tried to develop the model on natural farming. We have developed the Onla garden, Onla Nutri garden. For last 4 years, we are working on that. So we are giving good results, and the improvement of soil structures and soil characteristics also very good, and the quality of the food is also getting very good. Our chairman and founder of the KVK, Brigadier Sudhirji Sawant, ex-MP, is very interesting, and he is a motivator to us to disseminate the natural farming technology. Initially, we taken the guidance from Honorable Dr. Subhaji Palekar, and mass level severe mass level training programs organized by using the expertise from the Subhash Palekar ji, and also organized Shivar Peri. Now our KVK all experts are engaged in the natural farming also, and in district the farmers are also accepting the natural farming technologies, like the mostly using the Jivamrut as like input, bio inputs in farming. And we are circulating the literature also to the farmers in local language, and based our efforts for last 3 years, we are trying to find out the natural farmings and feedbacks from the farmers. Also, there are some suggestions from my side to disseminate this technology towards the farmers field. The most important thing is that it is required to standardize the natural farming practices. So there is no any standardization. There are no any recommendations from university level or research institutions. So we have to concentrate on that. Then the institutes like KVK and other extension agencies, they are eligible to spread this technology. But now we are making our sincere efforts to at least decrease the cost of cultivation of the farmers, saving the cost, and improve the quality of the food and improve the soil conditions. And our motivations are accepting the farmers, and in our area the heavy rainfall area is there, so we are also designing the what type of the recommendations to given the farmers in our area also, location specific, and some programs, training programs also designed to introduce in our agriculture college also. Our institute is running the agriculture college. So other than curriculum, we are giving training to them on natural farming. We are giving experiments to them on natural farming on our field also. So in natural farming, last 4 years we are doing such extension work. So not any more research work, but we are doing as a transfer of technology role. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
With me, there is our program coordinator, senior scientist and head, Honorable Bhaskar Kajrekar sir. He is giving some remarks in short. Thank you.
Sure. Bhaskar ji, boliye.
Namaskar, everybody. I am Bhaskar Kajrekar, senior scientist and head of KVK Sindhudurga. This NCNF is a good platform for forwarding the movement of this natural farming in India. And now KVK Sindhudurga, under the leadership of Brigadier Sudhir Sawant, is doing some efforts in transfer of this eco-friendly natural farming techniques, particularly through various Mahashibars organized by our institute KVK and our host organization Sindhudurga Jilla Krishi Pratishthan, under the expertise of Padma Shri Subhash Ji Palekar. We have reached in whole part of our district as well as nearby district in Ratnagiri. We have arranged this Shibir. Then some of the training programs for mango growers, then various field crops, farmers, etc. And we are adopting and implementing such practices on our farm. We have started all the practices. We are teaching students as well as particularly the Rave students. 4th year program is there in BSc Agriculture. So those students goes to villages and through them we teach them, give training, and the technology is being transferred by them. Another
Thank you,
one thing
भास्कर
is
जी
that,
और विलास जी। यही सवाल, एक सवाल आपसे पूछना था कि अभी जो आपने कितने प्रोग्राम किए हैं और अंदाजन कितने लोगों का ट्रेनिंग हुआ है पिछले 1-2 साल या जो भी आप काम कर रहे हैं?
pardon sir,
you have mentioned you are doing a lot of short-term training programs. I think many members of the RRA network and other networks are also aware of it. So we just want to understand. I think we will take up the other questions a bit later. We will. There might be more questions as well. So just to get a sense of the numbers of people you have trained in the last, let's say, a couple of years or so, for the audience to get a sense of on natural farming, organic farming, agroecology.
Through this Mahashibir and various trainings, more than 2,000 farmers are benefited, and they have started. Some of them have started practicing some of the natural farming practices, like using Jivamrut, use of Achhadan, that is mulching, some plant-oriented pesticides, like that. Some farmers have started, and they have getting some good results. They are giving feedbacks. One thing is that we have not standardized technology to
आपने वो बात कही है. We will come back to this. I think there was also a question from one of the participants, and we'll come back to this. Thank you very much for your sharing your experience on the field. We will have a question answer session. Also, we have 2 more speakers. So I would like to now request, so just to our other 2 speakers who are with us today, we have with us Professor A.R. Vasavi. And Professor Vasavi is a social anthropologist and an independent researcher based out of Bangalore with interests in agrarian studies, sociology of India, and educational studies. She's worked at the IIM Ahmedabad and for 14 years at NIAS Bangalore, including a year as the Dean of Social Sciences. So she's the co-founder of Punarchit, an organization for alternative learning in Chamarajanagar district in Karnataka, and also the founding member of the Network of Rural and Agrarian Studies. Professor Vasavi, the question that we would like you and also Ramanjanelu to address, we also have Dr. Ramanjanelu. Dr. Ramu, as he is popularly known, is the founder of the Center for Sustainable Agriculture in Hyderabad. He's an agricultural scientist and was with the ICAR earlier. He pioneered the concept of NPM in agriculture and helped many villages in Andhra become pesticide free. He was a member of the National Knowledge Commission Working Group on Agriculture in 2005. Currently, he is working in partnership with Government of Andhra Pradesh in establishing organic or natural farming and FPOs in 4 districts, but also across the country with many states, and many of us are aware of his work. So to both of you, we've heard a little bit of the initiatives and innovations on natural and organic farming. The numbers, as you can see, are interesting. There is some effort, but are we, what are the knowledge challenges and perhaps even opportunities in engaging with mainstream agriculture universities? Because if we do not understand this difficulty, and I think Dr. Mewada mentioned a bit as well on it. So what are the challenges in moving towards the shift towards agroecology? So I'd like to start with Dr. Vasavi and then go to Dr. Ramu.
Yeah. Thank you, Shambu. Yeah. Basically, some of the issues have already been raised by other speakers, but I also want to qualify that I come from having worked in an alternative learning program, not necessarily seen primarily as an organic agricultural course. So my advice for initiating an organic agriculture course or agroecology would be to see it as an integrated learning program rather than a purely agricultural program. I say this keeping in mind the kind of learners or the audience or the participants one has. For us, the focus was on rural youth who dropped out from high school or who just attended 1 or 2 years of college and are from agrarian agricultural backgrounds. For them, even introducing just pure agriculture would have been very inadequate. So we situated it within 4 modules, and I think this is what the other mainstream, colleges or universities can consider. That one, it needs to be integrated very strongly to understanding ecologies, local ecologies. That agriculture is part of environment, and it extends towards becoming a social issue. Because as Shambu, you very rightly said in the beginning, when in introducing agroecologies, it is juxtaposed or in opposition to both green revolution or to the industrial chemical agriculture. And we need to take on some of those principles and situate agriculture so. And this is what I would suggest it be done. And therefore, there should be 2 dimensions in the curriculum. Introducing the principles of agriculture, which, all the lists many of people have highlighted, actually conducting agriculture and what type that can be discussed. But I think it also needs to be emphasized that there can be no one single kind of agroecology or one single type of natural farming, that it has to be localized and to address not only diverse ecologies, but diverse agriculture is really what has long evolved over centuries, and that really is the future. So to do that, to look at diversities of agricultures, you need to recognize the importance of local knowledge. But here also local knowledge needs to be tweaked a lot. Some of them may be not practical, not valid. Some have to be redone to the new context. For example, why I said when we need to situate agriculture and ecology is, it's a reality that even those who have fields, agricultural land, much of it is so eroded and denuded. Soil exhaustion is a key issue. So how do you look at soils, for example? And therefore, they may not have been traditional methods of soil restoration first. So we've been telling people that unless you restore your soil first, you can't do anything else. So those kind of things that need to be tweaked and understood. And within the context of global warming or climate change, which also becomes very specific to certain regions, how do you combine new inputs, for example, whether it's Panchagavya, which is thing which can be considered old, but also local knowledge systems, and tweak it to address climate change. For example, we have data to show how for the past 6 years, no season has been similar at all. Every cultivation season, that is 12 seasons in 6 years, each of them has been so different. And every time farmers have been nixed at points, whether first it's delayed monsoons, then it's excessive rains, changing wind patterns, and farmers themselves are telling us now how dramatic and how significant climate change is. So I would say to make it integrated, we need to bring all this together, that there can be no single package. So linked to that point of making it localized is also then the importance of pedagogies. How would you teach? And Anshuman highlighted some of this very well, which looks at it as process, as learning, and as a reflexive. But what we've tried to do, and what I would also suggest for universities, is to go beyond the textbook kind of learning, to see the field or your immediate situation, your context, your ecology where you are as the text. Only if those are understood, for example, the specificity of whether it's a desert, it's a high mountain area, or a semi-arid area, or rich alluvial coastal area, or how does that impact agriculture? So therefore, only by making that kind of observations, those kind of linkages would a very deep and relevant and practical understanding be disseminated. So land itself or environment itself has the text, and using that, for example, how do you understand the seasons in that area, the climate in that area, or anything, the soil, the stones, whatever it is, the common natural resources that exist, the agricultural practices. then I think combining the principles of organic agriculture or, agroecologies, which Anshuman again detailed very well. It was also in the other course, along with the other practices. One thing that I very seriously suggest is, because we've checked it out with our local KVK, we've checked it out with all the state agricultural universities in Karnataka, the courses are conducted in complete lack of synchrony to cultivation seasons. They are synchronized to the university cycles. So, for example, we start the course with a pre-monsoon, when land is being prepared. So you start, a good farmer starts with preparing the land. You don't start sowing immediately. So it goes with that whole cycle. The season is the curriculum. The schedule of the curriculum is the season. Pre-sowing, preparing the land, to post-harvest. You harvest it and processing. How do you save the seeds, conserve the seeds, or what do you take to the market, etc. This is difficult given the way it stretches or it defines. For example, last year, although we've not run the course for 2 years because of COVID, we found that the season this year has stretched right up till the first week into, say, till yesterday, where because of excessive rain, the whole season has stretched far beyond the average 3.5 to 4 months. So how does that flexibility be built? But I think an orientation to scheduling the curriculum to matching the life of the land would be very important, rather than an artificial schedule. And that's one thing. Finally, I just want to say that when we said the integrated learning, we found that no matter how, for most rural youth, especially those who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, no matter what sophisticated or what new knowledge they would have, all of this needs to be positioned against two things. One is, it's not productivity alone that is important, because we found every time people came and they looked at our land, what we're doing, they'd say, oh, excellent seeds, very good quality, but such low production. So we know this productivity trope has been so important to modern chemical agriculture. So how do you question that? Why sustainability is important, why conservation of soil and seeds and water is important. Those are linked. The second is the social dimension of the individual farm as the unit. Only if I own land can I do this. Only if I have this enough of land. And more recently, as you've seen across the country, and Shambu, you know, I've written about this, is that agriculture is being defined by the tube well. Only if I have a tube well can I be in agriculture. So, you know, when we have tried to, because we are in a dry belt, trying to tell people why the importance of dry agriculture itself. So the social dimensions of agriculture, in which you contest and you critique dominant paradigms and ideas and come back to issues of social justice, to economic stability, and to ecological sustainability. I think this is important. So to do this, very much back to what Anshuman highlighted, the importance of communication skills. So we, when I say integrated, we give a lot of communication skill activities. So it's not just only about agriculture. They read literature, writing, write about it, write your experiences. So writing skills improve, speaking skills improve. This, I think, is important because in the context of alternative policies, which you're also part of, we have been saying that agricultural policy should be decentralized, local farmers should make it, so crop planning has to be decentralized. Unless farmers, especially young new farmers like this, are empowered and enabled to engage in these processes, it would all be quite futile. So again, just to go back, I would say that the course should be envisaged as much more holistic, but also integrated to knowledges where disciplinary boundaries are challenged very significantly, and that would go a long way. So finally, I just want to say that in the new kind of parameters they use, going beyond the individual field, socially, given that large numbers are marginal farmers, for example, most of our students have less than 1 acre of land. It is not viable anymore to sustain a family, even if it's good production in a year. So they have to come together on collectives or group farming or whatever the new kind of things are for, you know, FPOs or whatever. So introducing them to also these new systems. It cannot be just about marketing, etc., along with new kinds of processes, but also marketing in new ways but also production on non-individual, non-small unit holdings would be very important. So this is what I had to share. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Professor Vasavi, for very interesting and insightful observations on the need of the curriculum to be both integrated, importantly linked to the farming seasons, and work with what is there on the field to look at it in a more wider context of, not just agriculture. I think Rajendra Jaiswal has also indicated other elements that need to be part of the curriculum, and to make the process in such a way that the rural youth feel empowered to take on and bring about change. Yeah. We now would request Dr. Ramanjneelu, you've been in this for quite some time, both as initially by giving suggestions on agricultural extension and also practicing this in many ways. So over to you, Ramu.
Thank you, Shambu. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to work, to share actually our journey. My journey with agriculture curriculum started almost my college days, 27 years back. So my post-graduation was around looking at how RAVE program can help. Andhra Pradesh Agriculture University was the first university to start rural agricultural experience program, and mine was the first evaluation of the program and how it is helping students to learn, and then whether it needs a modification kind of thing. But that was very early stage for me to understand what is happening. So some suggestions were made, but which were never taken on board. And my PhD was on education management in IRMA. So trying to look at the courses offered, and then how the seasons, how the courses are offered, and then what teachers expect students to do, and what students expect teachers to do, and what management expects both teachers and students to do. That was an interesting course, study which I did, and I submitted my thesis in 1996, and with whole lot of findings saying what is going on is wrong, and then how do we change. So just to tell you, in continuation of what Vasavi has already mentioned about the synchronization with seasons, IRA follows a trimester system, and nowhere in the world any university, agriculture university, follows it. And so that was one finding where I thought, why the trimester system is followed here when all agriculture universities have already shifted to semester system. And when I asked the management, they said, yeah, this was discussed. I'm talking about 96, 95. It was discussed, but decision is postponed. And I went through the records. The discussion started 30 years back. So nearly 60 years back, the discussion started that we should switch from trimester system to semester system. No decision has been taken. Even today, that it's a trimester system. First trimester starts in August to November. Second starts from December to April. Third starts from May to July. Which crop will coincide with this? And all students start from the half of the season and ends in half of the season who were linked to the crops. And leaving aside crops, if you look at extension or economics or any other thing, there is no way the courses help the students to understand what is required. So in fact, I tried to map what was the student's interest, what was the teacher's interest, what was the management interest, and finally, what is the farmer's interest. And when I put a Venn diagram, all were in divergent ways rather than actually converging. So there was no convergence in terms of how to offer these courses kind of thing. Then while working in ICR, I tried to understand where extension goes wrong or where technology goes wrong, and that part. So I'm not going into it now. And then our journey again started with working with the Madhya Pradesh government, state government. I was part of I was heading the committee which was looking at the course curriculum of schools, secondary to 10th class. And it was a very interesting situation. Their analysis was that nearly 60% of the students after 10th class go back to agriculture. And in 10 years, they don't study anything about agriculture. So they wanted to revive the agricultural schools. Madhya Pradesh had agricultural schools earlier, and that were discontinued. So they wanted to revive that. So I was heading the committee, and then we made a course curriculum. And that was an interesting exercise. So when we were doing it with the teachers, so teachers said, if you introduce new courses, students may not be interested. So can we add it to the existing courses? So we took the entire course syllabus from secondary to 10th class and then looked at, say, in science, what lessons can be changed, in sociology, in social sciences, what can be changed, in mathematics, what can be changed. Say, instead of trained calculations, can we put in number of trees required per acre if that is there is a particular spacing, or depending on the water level, can we calculate what is the pump size requirement kind of thing. And then that course curriculum was introduced in Madhya Pradesh in 2012. Then in 2019, we partnered with ITM University, Centurion University, and I was also part of the Board of Studies in NIMIMS in Maharashtra. So we tried to develop course curriculum, including with agroecological framework. I was also part of the Calcutta University course curriculum development. So we tried with these 3 universities. ICR was completely against of any change in the curriculum. So in BSc Agriculture, for example, there were about 238 credits, and they were not ready to change any of these credits. And everything was defined what to say in the classroom. Up to that level, it was there. And probably around 6 credits, the universities had a choice to make a change. And 2019, we started with, again, Telangana Social Welfare Residential Schools. They started something called as an Earth School, which is a very interesting model, where students were trained on growing the crop and agriculture, the same like Madhya Pradesh, we started introducing into the course curriculum. And now they're really able to grow vegetables for their hostels. So 600 students hostel, every day they meet their vegetable requirement from the farm. And then the farm is planned in such a way that every day they will have a harvest, which is they require. So here they learn management, they learn technology, they learn economics, everything. So that's going on in Telangana Social Welfare Schools from 2019. In 2020, we started something called as a Grameen Academy. So with all these experience, what we thought is we should have a larger network of institutions which offer courses, because while we work on scaling up of NPM or natural farming, organic farming, the drawback we thought is we don't have good people. So if you want to take it forward, you need actually people, and building the capacities of the people is very much required. So we started something called as a Grameen Academy. Currently it is online, but we are also trying to set up centers and places. So first one is going to start in November 2022. We call it a Center of Excellence for Agroecology, where we have research, education, extension together happening. It's near Vijayawada. We are setting it up. So this is our journey. And the core challenges, if I had to sum up our learnings of this last 27 years, so there is no basic courses in schools. Majority of the school, like I mentioned, the school dropouts take to farming, and then there is no school curriculum at all. And when we talk about courses about agroecology, so it is not about introducing a course on agronomy, a organic farming course as agronomy. In agronomy, actually, we need a framework of understanding the problems. I think that is missing. So if you are talking about an agroecological framework, how it looks at conventional agriculture or organic farming, natural farming. So how do you understand these different schools of thought? And then what are their impacts? I think that is something which is required, which is completely missing. So if we take into account the producers, consumers, the natural resources, the economic sustainability, ecological sustainability, how they are all interact is something which is important. So in the universities, we don't get an understanding of this. I'll deal with it in more details. And when we talk about university, we also should talk about extension services, because the people from agriculture university is what are going to take up these extension services later on. So how these extension services work is also something which is very, very critical. So when we talk about agroecology, currently if you look at the courses on organic farming also, they are exactly based on the same green revolution paradigm. So basically input based. So you replace probably urea, you replace with Jivamrut, or you replace with rhizobium, or we replace with compost. So it's basically an input driven rather than a whole ecosystem framework based. So when we talk about agroecology, we should look at natural resources, natural processes, the people involved, farmers and consumers, markets, and then what is the production relationship between all these? So how people are linked to the natural resources, say what is the access? and then the policies, where the investment goes, where the regulations happen. That's something which is important. So that's the framework. And if you look at from that point of view, and the challenge and the way agriculture is changing, if you look at the future of farming, the ecosystem, the way it is changing, say we are moving towards sustainable production systems, largely farmers collectives have become a reality, digitalization is happening, quality assurance is a very important phenomenon, and farmer income centric approach is required. If you are looking at this, and a transition pathway which includes people, knowledge, skills and attitude and resources, none of this figure out in education, agricultural education. That's a challenge. So are we actually preparing ourselves for future is the challenge. Unfortunately, we live in the past. Some talk about 3000 years past glory, some talk about 60 years past glory. No one is actually talking about what is the next 50 years challenge, and then how do we modify our research, our education, or our extension to suit that. I think that's where actually challenge lies. How do we bring in this agro ecosystem framework into education, research and extension is something which is very important. So that's where actually we need to head through. And we don't have a problem solving approach in education. We actually have a solution based approach. So I know one solution, so I apply to everything, rather than if you put anyone into any of these problem situations, they cannot diagnose the problem and then design a solution for that. So we are not actually preparing solution providers. Basically, we are not creating people who can solve the problem. So that's where we need a challenge. So when we talk about entrepreneurship, I'll just take an example how we fail. Let's talk about entrepreneurship. Everybody is talking about startups. And then again, we have put all these startup incubation centers in the same agriculture universities and the same ICR institutions, who themselves don't understand the situation and who themselves are not entrepreneurial. I can understand if IRMA holds a incubation center. What in NORM or manage or agriculture university doing it, where they don't understand any of these things. So what they are doing is they just bring in someone to train or do trainings. And if you look at who are these incubators, 99.99 of them are not agriculture students. So they basically come from some other sector, do something else. So at least agriculture university should have focused on building entrepreneurship there. So it's completely, wherever there is I would say a political will to put investment, the institutions are jumping into it. So the current fad about natural farming and organic farming courses is also around that. Rather than actually looking at what is the situation, to that, how do we change our approach? So take a scientific approach towards that is something which is important, and that is missing completely. So similarly, if you look at FPOs, so where are the FPO courses? Where are the courses in FPOs? We are talking about nearly 20,000 FPOs which are there now. So older ones about 10,000 and new ones about 10,000 we are talking about. Not a single university offer a course. None of the BSAG courses have part of their syllabus understanding the management of FPOs. So you are not actually preparing people. Not even diploma courses are available today. So that's where actually the challenge lies. So we try to dialogue with the universities. We try to dialogue with ICR. It's a hard nut to crack. It's a glass wall against which we are trying to break our heads seriously. So we need to look at how this can be changed. I think it's a time we need to change. We also need to create parallel institutions. I think that's where challenge lies. So towards that is what we are also trying to work. We need to work together in raising more material on this, more experiences on this, so that the change is possible. So when we talk about field experiences, whether we talk about courses, whether we talk about research, even I would say research frameworks are very, very bad today. They have to change. Yeah, I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ramu. And thanks a lot to all our panelists. We do have some time for question answers, so maybe I'd request Deborah to raise a few questions which you can pose to the panelists, and then we'll take the responses together. And then towards the end, we could request a few of the panelists to respond to what should the curriculum be. I think both Dr. Vasavi and Ramu have already addressed that upfront. But over to you, Deborah.
Yeah, I mean, also if panelists have any comments on others' presentation, even they could briefly comment. In terms of, we have the questions, actually, most of them are in the form of some comments, and maybe I will ask Dr. Kandar. I mean, a recurring, I think, question has been that in the name of standardization, there may be constraints in the course, either at MSc or PhD level, where local and context-specific intervention and innovations are not considered so much. So how does one balance the need for maybe standardization and context specificity? कंदर जी आपका म्यूट है. हाँ.
So there are so many practices. There are so many indigenous practices that we have to standardize that practices, whether it is and validate it. We have to validate that indigenous knowledge. कभी कभी क्या होता है कि कोई एक बोल लेता है कि ये होता है, लेकिन scientifically what is true? So we have to standardize it and validate it on a scientific base. So we have to develop the skill and technology, और पूरा उसका जो प्रोग्राम है वो करना पड़ेगा. उसके बाद उसको हम वैलिडेट कर सकते हैं, और वैलिडेट करने के बाद, बिकॉज इन नेचुरल फार्मिंग और ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग इट इज नॉट लाइक दैट like industry that we put some input and we get set output readily. So it's a long term process. Validation is also a long term process. It takes time. So our aim is like that.
Right. So another question has been with respect to the connection between theory and practice, and whether students actually get a chance to do physical farming by themselves on land, and I mean, is there a certain burden on them to necessarily put into practice everything they're learning? So, and this is, I think, for the agroecology studies. So, Anshuman, would you like to take it up?
I don't know whether we were asking this question in reference to the agriculture courses currently being offered by the agricultural universities.
Both, yeah.
So, yeah. So I think there are scopes of students doing agriculture in their quote-unquote farm, but agriculture, as I think Ramu has already shared quite extensively, and also Vasavi. But agriculture is not only about techniques. Agriculture is not about, hal chalana. So it's so many things. I mean, it is a function of many different things. It's a function of economic activities. It's a function of ecological setup of this entire thing. So, just in the name of being practical, I mean, whatever we are doing in the universities right now is just over-focused on technology. And agriculture is not about, particularly agroecology is not about technology only.
Right.
So what we are trying in the universities are just mere trying to learn some techniques, and that's why we cannot learn agroecology.
Yeah. There's another question for the panelists with respect to the issue of gender in agriculture, and how does it impact natural farming and the agroecological processes, and especially when we talk about the migration in agricultural communities and the role women play in agriculture. So are there ways in which these concepts should be introduced in the curricula? I
would like to answer.
Yes.
See, the entire agrarian crisis itself is not part of any of these institutions. Say, whether it is about farmer suicides, whether it is about gender relationships, production relationships, or when you look at the public policy and impact on agriculture, none of them are part of the course curriculum, and very unfortunately. And even the books are not revised, I would say. Say the soil science, in the soil science, the soil classification is somewhere 1924 classification. Later on, there were a lot of new knowledge which has come up, which is not there. So that's where actually the problem comes in. So in the name of standardization, the notes is very much standardized. And then the same teachers, so nearly about 60 to 70% of the teachers study in the same university, so same books. So over time, it is actually inbreeding. So if you look at 1960s, where agriculture universities have started, by 2022, nearly about 50 to 60 years, and we have inbred all the teachers. So that's where the problem lies. So it is not linked actually. So there's no discussion at all on any of these issues.
Right. Right. Dr. Vasavi, would you like to add? Or any other general comment?
Yeah, I actually, when I spoke about the social dimensions, I didn't elaborate, but it's a very important issue. Both caste and gender issues have to be forefronted. There is really very little understanding of the links between caste and distribution of resources, and the whole agrarian system, how it is also has a very close relationship to the caste system, and it's new kind of tensions that are there. Well, with gender issues, one of the biggest contradiction is if you see women, 50, I would say right now about 45 and above, they are really the repositories.
I think we have lost you.
We've lost you, Vasavi, briefly. We're not able to hear you. You could probably turn off your video and then respond, or in the meantime, we'll take up another question that's just come up. Uma Shankari is saying, while endorsing all the panelists' view, I have a few observations. There is a big resistance to physical or agricultural work among the agri-science graduates. I think there should be a physical fitness test and an aptitude test, love for nature, willingness to do physical work, etc. I think it's a comment. R&D is totally missing. We organic farmers are blindly following some practices. We've heard of lab to land. We need now land to lab. That's a bit of a comment. I guess if anyone wants, they could add to it.
Shambu, yes, I just want to add, Shambu. In fact, I missed when I was saying this. See, the way the students are selected is based on entrance examination. And it is the same entrance examination which is for medical exam. So basically, students who could not get into medical sciences will get into agriculture. So from day one, it is like that. So it's not, so people from rural areas who actually want to get into agriculture, it's very difficult to get into it, because you have to compete with urban students who are working for, who are trying to get into medicine. You are competing with them. And so they are actually sliding down, and then they are coming into these courses who are not interested. That's one of the reasons. If you see, first 2 semesters, the students leaving BSc AG is very high. And from then onwards, there will be a frustration in the students. In fact, there was one study done in, there was a study done by one of the agriculture universities, which looked at the career choices of agricultural students. And nearly about 60% of them civil services, and then nearly about 40% of them said banks. And no one said actually taking up agriculture, but even working as agriculture officers and or into the research is a very minor choice. I think that's a problem, because creating that interest, at least after coming into the institutions, is also not there. I still remember when I joined ICR, how I was ridiculed, saying, why did I leave IRS and then joined agricultural research, kind of. So that's the kind of thing. So that's an attitudinal issue is there in the research and extension.
Right. We are also short on time, maybe like 1 or 2 more questions, and maybe we wait if Dr. Vasavi is able to rejoin.
Yeah, she is joined, I think.
Okay.
Vasavi, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah. Sorry, my connectivity is very poor. I'm in a remote area, actually.
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to say about the gender issues is the contradiction is the elder women are really the repositories of knowledge. But if you see the younger generation, especially the ones who've been to school and done even a little bit of college, etc., there's a very strong anti-agricultural attitude. And every year we just see the complete depletion of knowledge that is taking place, not only about cultivation itself, but also the back end, the processing, conserving seeds, processing things like, say, castor oil, etc. Huge amounts of knowledge have all been lost because of the empowerment of women that is taking place. So we've also tried to incentivize women to join the cause. And I think looking at women's knowledge system and then encouraging them to be much more active, I think will be very, very important to see it as going beyond sort of drudgery, but the kind of roles that they have played and that the new generation should also play, I think it will be very important.
Yeah, so I think we'll probably take up this question from Prabhakar Babu. I think he's provoking all the panelists by asking a question. Is it possible to get fast results? That is not taking years and years to get better results, because nowadays farmers are giving priority for quick and better results from agricultural crops. Yes, Kandabji and then Ramu.
So I think this is a very tricky question because it is a change in the soil pattern, soil microbiology of the soil. So it is very difficult to get or we cannot go so fast. कोई conclusion पर पहुंचने से पहले वो time तो लेगा. Now it depends on the what type of technology or what type of technology you are testing. If it is for seed, we are taking more than 6 or 7 years. It is for nutrients or for soil health, at least we have to go for 3 years. That is the standard given by ICAR. तो 3 साल तो लगेंगे कि आपकी सॉइल में क्या क्या फर्क है, उसका ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन क्या कितना हो रहा है, अवेलेबल नाइट्रोजन कितना हो रहा है, फास्फोरस कितना है, whatever. So it takes 3 years at least. And as far as this organic is concerned, we should go for at least 5 years.
Okay, I think Ramu also has to say something on it. But Prabhakar, I think one of the things of trying to do things too fast is we may be like the Sri Lankan situation. So it's a diktat given from the state to you shift. And if you're not supporting farmers with this transition, there are indeed going to be a backlash. Ramu, you wanted to say something and then we can move on.
Two points I wanted to say, because Sri Lanka was referred many times. I wanted to refer to Sri Lanka. I was engaging with Sri Lankan team for a long time. Actually, I know from Sarath Fernandez time, say I would say, on agroecological issues and all, and then from now also with the university and other people. See, the issue was the factor productivity of fertilizers have gone down significantly, and the fertilizer use has increased significantly in Sri Lanka, like India. So when the country was getting into debt and then they had to import fertilizers, they had no other go, because 85% of the repayments had to be made. The 85% of the budget goes for repayment of the loans. So they don't have any money to buy fertilizers. It was a ship to mouth kind of situation. So if they don't get the ship, they don't have fertilizer. Kind of in that situation, actually they took a decision. It's not that in fact the decision was delayed too much. It would have been taken 10 years back. It was postponed, and in a situation where there is no escape, they have taken the decision. And that, I think we need to understand that, and we also should learn that we should not get into that kind of situation. So at least try from now, so that in the next 5 to 10 years, by the time fertilizer subsidy goes to some 10 lakh crores, where we don't have money, I think we should start now. And also where we don't have phosphorus reserves, or where we don't have petroleum reserves to make urea. So obviously we are going to get into that situation in the next 10 to 20 years. So we need to start change today. I think that is the first thing. Second, when you talk about quick solutions, obviously on an ecosystem level, there will be quick solutions. Say, for example, if the state of Gujarat want to reduce its fertilizer use by 25% by next year, without affecting the yields, they can easily do that. I would say it may not be at the farm level, but 25% fertilizer use reduction at Gujarat state level is quite possible. I would say today Telangana, which is the largest fertilizer using state in the country, can reduce its fertilizer use by 50% without affecting the yields by next year. These are quick, achievable things. Why not we do that? Look at pesticide use. We can reduce pesticide use by 90% without affecting the crop yields. NPM experience shows that. Very first season we can have that. Why can't we do that? I would say let's start like that. So let's not look at organic farming as a special program or a special course. Let's look at overall agriculture, how it translates towards a agroecological framework. And quick results are quite possible in that. So transition pathways can be incremental. Say, I would say some farmer may reduce it to 50% first year, second year 50%, third year 50%. Some may reduce first year. Let people make the choice. Why should government make the choice? Like they made the choice for green revolution, why government should make the choice for that? What government should do is create an equitable platform where equal resources are available. Say, for example, today a farmer gets fertilizer subsidy. If somebody is using 10 bags of urea, they get nearly about 10,000 rupees subsidy. Whereas if somebody has to make their own compost, they have to spend from their pocket. So can we create an equitable support systems? Then look at what change is possible. Similarly, on the research also, say across the country, not even 1% is spent on organic farming research. Not even 0.5% is spent on organic farming education. And then we are expecting the results to happen. So quick results can happen if we can make a plan at a district level or at a state level. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, Deborah, you want to say something? Or
No, I was saying that we can maybe summarize. I mean, because we do have some comments, but they have mostly been addressed. And Riya,
yeah, so just a quick acknowledgement of Kirti Mishra, Madhavi Reddy, Rakesh Sukkar, Uma, of course, we've addressed, Milind Joshi, Tara Nair, and many others, Dinesh Reddy. We probably haven't taken up all the points that you mentioned, but hopefully we can share this with the panelists later. We had planned this to be a 1.5 hour discussion, but I think the topic is of a great amount of interest, so it has thrown up many other challenges. So I think one of the things that we may want to do before I hand it over to Riya to present a vote of thanks and a quick summary is to see if we can take some of these ideas and, if possible, start a dialogue with ICAR and DARE to take this much further. It's a process that needs a lot of dialogue, and I think we've got enough insights to take forward. Over to you, Riya.
Thank you, Professor Shambu. It was a wonderful couple of hours to be listening to all of you, because one thing that came out unanimously across all of you was that agroecology is a very holistic and integrated process. Transferring to agroecology-based curriculum requires a lot of thinking, a lot of capacity building, a lot of changes across not just the kind of students who get, not just the attitude of the students who participate, but also in the pedagogies and the extension systems and support systems that are there in the ecosystem. I thank Anshumanda, Dr. Mewada, Vilasavanji and Kadrikar ji from KVK Sindhudurg for sharing their innovations, be it through the the student-centric learning pedagogy that Anshumanda mentioned, where the students directly work with the farmers to understand the entire process of agroecology, or the other innovation of how to involve the MSc PG students in the entire process of agroecology to help them understand this process through research activities. And otherwise, through KVK Sindhudurg, how in the RAWE program, the students can directly go to the organic fields and understand the process. So these are definitely some innovations that can be immediately brought into our pedagogies, the existing curriculums, for smoothening the transition a little bit and coming down to the challenges and the opportunities that both Dr. Vasavi and Dr. Ramu presented, it clearly pointed out that the existing system is there is a certain disconnect between the existing system and the entire approach or the perspective of agroecology. There is a lot of synchronization to be done between the two, for which there is capacity building required, capacities of the universities, of the different stakeholders in the ecosystem is required. Also, it becomes important that there is that this input-driven existing system needs to be transitioned towards a holistic practice. So our pedagogies need to be tweaked according to our current system as well. So this is definitely a challenge. At the same time, it is an opportunity as well, because there is so many people who have worked over these decades of years in the space of agroecology-based farming, that clearly the experiences can come very helpful in tweaking these processes. I think at the end, I would like to thank everyone for joining us, for taking your time and joining us, and thank all the speakers, and thank Professor Shambu and Deborah for moderating the session. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ria.
And thank you all. The recording will be available live, and we do have those of you who have registered. We hope to be in touch with you, and let's keep this conversation going. Thanks a lot, Shivansh, for the support in ensuring